the only true democracy in talk radio. Of, for, and by you, the people. Live nationwide and streaming live at lesliemarshallshow.com.
Here to set you free. How you doing? I'm Leslie Marshall. Good afternoon. Welcome or welcome back. Only true democracy in talk. Really excited to have this guest with us because he is from the Center for American Progress, and he is specifically from the Center for American Progress Action Fund. But I love the CAP. Love those folks, love those facilities, and love the people that work with them. Our guest, Mike Sozan, is Senior Fellow at the Center for American Progress Action Fund. He's a top expert on American democracy. He served as former Senator Mark Udall's Chief of Staff, worked for former Senators Jim Webb, Bill Nelson, and he also served as an attorney for the Department of Justice and for the FCC. More than a pleasure to have Mike on the program this afternoon. Mike, thank you for joining us. Welcome, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I appreciate you being with us.
Thanks, Leslie. I'm really happy to be here.
Really happy to have you with us. Well, let's just dig in because the time goes by fast. We don't have you for lots of time, but we're glad to have you for the time we do. There are different opinions about the trial, right? There are people that say, he's a convicted felon and they think he's going to be hauled off in an orange suit and handcuffs and go to jail. I don't think so. People always posting about Martha Stewart. It was her first offense. She went to jail. I mean, the list goes on. So let's dig in just a little bit. This trial was about more than just a hush money payment, right? It's kind of funny. I saw something funny today that said, let me get this straight. You paid $150,000 to a woman you claim that you never knew and you didn't sleep with, and you didn't want to shut up because you didn't know her for actions you never took. Anyway, but this trial was more, about more than just a hush money payment. So let's talk about what it really was about or what it ties into. The ergo, if you will. And that was about the former president's repeated efforts to interfere in free and fair elections in our nation. Correct?
That's exactly correct, Leslie. It's, I know the popular phrase to describe the trial was the hush money trial. People even talked about the falsification of business records. But you're right that it's much broader than that. Donald Trump paid hush money and then falsified business records in a scheme to keep the American people from finding out about the affair because he knew it would hurt his chances at election. And so this was a way of tampering with the free and fair election in 2016. It's ironic because Trump is talking a lot right now about election interference and accusing Joe Biden and others of trying to interfere with the election. Well, we know that Trump was doing that in 2016. It's been a pattern of his where he tries to bend the rules, the laws, the political norms in order to get in power and stay in power.
And that, you read my mind because, this hush money scheme is a pattern of behavior, right? If you look at Donald Trump prior to being president as a businessman, certainly becoming president as president, trying to become president again, losing and failing to be president, and, everything surrounding this trial and his current campaign and hoping to win the next election this November of 2024, like to your point, it is a larger pattern of doing anything it takes, not just to gain power, to hold on to power. He's already talked about if elected, he's going to try and push through and pull an FDR, if you will, right? And have more than, one more term because he's already served one. And that includes asking Russia for help. Asking them for help during the 2016 election, inciting an insurrection to overturn the election that he lost and still will not concede he lost in 2020, and just lies constantly. Today, he's saying he never said lock her up. How much video do we have of that? It's beyond the emperor wears no clothes. So could you speak to us about that larger pattern, expounding on the point you just made regarding whatever it takes, anything it takes to gain and hold on to that power?
Sure. I mean, I think we've seen this is a pattern that he learned earlier in life, even as a kid. His dad reportedly taught him that there's only two types of people in this world, winners or losers, and that he better be a winner. And winning for Donald Trump has always meant a business or politics or whatever pursuit that he can bend the rules however he wants to win. And then he can deny reality. He can tell us that what we saw, we really didn't see. I mean, we're all familiar now with his phrase of the big lie. That's what he perpetuated in the 2020 election, where he was already saying before the election that if he lost, it was going to be because of massive voter fraud. He was already conditioning people with that lie. And then we saw everything that happened when he masterminded the plot to try to overturn the 2020 election, which grew into the insurrection. So he's been getting away with it in some ways for a very long time. And I think that that's one of the real powerful aspects of this jury verdict. Finally, Donald Trump is being held accountable, guilty 34 times on felony counts. I can only imagine what he was thinking as he had to sit there in that courtroom and hear that judgment rendered about him. He hasn't often had to do that. He hasn't often had to stick in one place and actually sit there and hear people who disagree with him and are holding him to account. So what I've said is, it's not necessarily that we should be celebrating the fact that he was found guilty, because it's really a sobering day for this country. This is the first president or former president who's been charged with crimes and found guilty of crimes. This is terrible for our democracy. And what I hope is the next step, aside from the legal accountability, is the political accountability. Now we need to see how people are going to factor this into how they vote.
So we're already seeing, I have to say, I was wrong. I hate to admit I was wrong. I didn't think this was going to move the needle. And the reason is we all know that this is an extremely tight race coming down to about 6 states and a sliver of people, independents largely, within those states. So I think we can all say it comes down to about 5% of the 6 states or less. And you're looking at, people winning by a 1 or 2% margin, tighter than we have seen in many elections, and seems to be the way election cycles are going right now. And this is not a kitchen table issue. There are many people that weren't following the trial. And, this isn't the economy. This isn't immigration. But it does tie into threat to democracy to a degree. This isn't about, Roe v. Wade, abortion, women's reproductive rights. The list goes on, right? So I really didn't think, we were going to see that, but we are seeing that. We are seeing that specifically among independents. And there were people that were saying, whether it was 40% or 60%, depending on what poll that you saw, if he's indicted, maybe he shouldn't. Now that the, gavel has come down 34 times, as you said, now we're seeing those polls starting to change. But since 2016, I don't have huge confidence in any of the polls. But to your point, Trump is doing the same thing that he's been doing now in 2024. He's trying to hold on to power by running, trying to hold on to power by lying, and he's trying to stay out of jail. Also by lying. We have a former member of the Trump team who has said, look, this isn't Joe Biden. I mean, this is the state of New York, which Joe Biden does not have control over, that brought these charges. And when people say, oh, well, it's New York, it's not a jury of his peers, we have bigger trials coming. And we have one of those trials occurring in a pretty red state that was barely blue in the 2020 flip for Joe Biden.
That's right. And it's interesting, of course, that Trump and his allies never criticized Judge Aileen Cannon, who's overseeing his trial in Florida. That's the classified documents case. He never calls into question that trial, how it's rigged against him or anything of the sort, because guess what? He's getting great rulings out of that judge. So we know that this is his MO. He's going to say that anything is rigged if it finds against him. And so going back to your point, though, I think that I think Americans really do care about whether a presidential candidate is a felony convict. I think that, of course, the MAGA, the extreme MAGA base is only going to like him even more after this verdict. And, liberals are probably always going to vote against him. But independents or moderates, and that might be that 5% sliver that you're talking about in just 5 or 6 battleground states, I absolutely think this matters to them. I mean, we're already seeing that showing up in some polling. But, I talk to a lot of people, including a lot of conservatives and independents as part of my work, or even just in my social circles or family. I have a lot of people from across the ideological spectrum that I deliberately talk to. And you know what? Some of them were actually, these are people who don't follow politics maybe too closely. They were shocked to learn that actually nothing in our Constitution or law prevents somebody from being elected or serving as president if they're convicted of a crime.
Do you know you cannot be a felon and serve in our military, but as president, you're commander in chief over the military, and you can be a convicted felon. Just another, mind blowing.
Right. And most people don't realize that. But when they've been learning that and they say, well, gosh, it might be really hard for me to vote for somebody who is convicted then. And so I can tell the gears are turning in a lot of Americans' minds. And I really do think that this conviction of Donald Trump could make a difference in some of those swing states.
We're going to be back with Michael Sozan. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk more about this in a great piece that he wrote. The website for Center for American Progress Action Fund is www.americanprogressaction.org. On X, follow them at Kappa Action. On Facebook at American Progress Action. On Instagram at Fight for Progress. And Mike's handle on X at Michael Sozan, MichaelSozan. Back after this.
If you miss Leslie on TV this week, catch up at lesliemarshallshow.com.
If you came across someone struggling with hunger, how would you recognize them? By their clothes, their age, the way they speak? Would you notice an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for summer break
because she may not be having lunch again until September?
Or a single father of 2 who works 3
part-time jobs and still can't put enough food on the table?
Or maybe a mother who cleans offices at night,
hoping to find meeting leftovers to take home to her hungry family.
Or a war veteran who's having a hard time landing
a job and getting back on his feet.
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. People you pass by every day but never knew were hungry. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America, 200 Food Banks Strong, and the Ad Council.
We are back with Michael Sozan. Michael is senior fellow at the Center for American Progress Action Fund, and we are talking about the Trump trial. And we're going to talk about a great article he wrote. But I just wanted to ask you, Michael, thank you for holding. Welcome back. This verdict in Manhattan, it's one critical step toward accountability. And how do you think it stands as a testament to our justice system? Because one of the things I feel that's very sad is this idea that you have to have a jury of people who align with you politically to get a fair trial. To me, that's a Pandora's box. That's a slippery slope.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, here the justice system held up. I'll remind your great listeners that, of course, Donald Trump and his team got to help select the jurors. We know that the juror pool is probably a bit more progressive in New York, but they were actively involved, Trump and his team, in selecting the jurors. And our system of justice is built on the presumption that jurors, no matter what their ideological persuasion or background or economic background may be, that they can put aside any biases they have and render a fair verdict. And that's what we trust juries to do day in and day out in this country. If we were questioning that at every juncture, then our criminal justice system would fall apart. In this case, we should also point out that the jurors and the judge and the prosecutor, and even in some cases their families, were under constant threats from Donald Trump, from his allies. As we remember, Trump himself violated the gag order 10 different times, and it was egregious violations. Again, an attack on the justice system. And I feel like the Judge Merchan, bent over backwards to not jail Trump, even though most other defendants would have been thrown in jail for violating the gag order so egregiously. So if anything, the system tried to be very fair to Donald Trump in this case. And it's really unfortunate in the weeks and months ahead that he's going to try to tear the justice system apart, and this verdict, this jury, this judge, putting them in further danger.
It really blows my mind, the hypocrisy, though, I must say, because, those on the right, they want to attack this judge, right? They want to attack anybody who's a Democrat or given to Democratic, causes or candidates. But they have no problem with the Supreme Court justice's wife flying a flag upside down. They have no problem with these Supreme Court justices' wives not only supporting the former president so outwardly, Ginny Thomas as well, Clarence Thomas's wife, and supporting an insurrection, but also talking about another insurrection coming if they don't like the verdict. If you don't like the verdict Look, I live in Los Angeles, and I wasn't here during the riots. I actually was in Buffalo during the riots, and I live here now. But you just can't do that. Something very interesting. My husband's a physician, and the overwhelming majority of medical malpractice cases rule in favor of the doctor. And you would think that a jury would rule with the patient, because the jury is more in common for the most part with the patient. And a lot of people view doctors as, oh, they're just trying to get rich and they're trying to operate as fast. You know what I mean? But when the facts are laid out, and the reason I say that is, regardless of the city or state this is in, I do think that I really feel, and I've been called for jury, they usually let me go because of my media connection, right? But, I really feel that at the end of the day, when somebody is in that jury box, just like when somebody's on a witness stand, they do tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, or they try for the most part. And they do consider it a huge responsibility, because that's a person's life, right? And there could be prison, so I get so angry at, and I know some people on the right are saying, I don't blame the jury, I blame the judge. No, Donald Trump, in this case, the defendant is to blame 34 times. Michael, you wrote a great piece, Counterpoint. Trump's conviction is an important victory for the rule of law. Let's talk about this. You write about a sobering milestone, a victory for accountability. You write about the fundamental principle that in our democracy that no one is above the law, not even its highest elected leader. So right now, even though we're seeing chaos out of the mouth of the defendant and, the convicted felon former president and his supporters, historically, how do you think this is going to be looked back on? And how do you think from today going forward, this is going to affect politicians with regard to justice and our justice system?
Oh, I'm going to wave my arms to get the lights to come back on. Okay.
Motion sensors.
These motion sensors here. I think this is a momentous day in the history of our country. It's the first time a president or former president has been convicted. I think when people look back on this in several decades, a couple hundred years from now, they're going to see that this was a really grave time where democracy was very much at danger. And I think that we're living through, unfortunately, an exceptionally polarized time where political violence is being espoused, where disinformation is being spread rampantly, where people don't know what facts that they can trust. And so that's where we find ourselves in really challenging times for our democracy, and why I really hope that the path that Americans are going to take in November is a path towards strengthening democracy, and ultimately where we can kind of give up a little bit of our tribalism and realize that there's certain political norms that we should really be able to agree on, like respect for the Constitution, that no one is above the law, not even a president. I mean, we don't have kings in this country, right? We broke away from having kings very deliberately. And the founding fathers very deliberately set out a system that would hopefully never allow a president to have king-like powers. But there are these norms that we should be able to agree on. And if Donald Trump is reelected, I really think there's going to need to be a bipartisan coalition going forward that really tries to act as some sort of check and balance on our country's slide towards autocracy.
Yeah, I want to go back to the jury again, too. This is a unanimous decision. And I say that, because I live in Los Angeles, in the state of California, both considered to be very blue. I have a number of friends that are Republicans, whether they're Reagan Republicans, John McCain Republicans, Mitt Romney Republicans, or Trump Republicans. And they are differences in those Republicans, right? So I find it hard to believe that all 12, have, such negative feelings toward this man. And people forget that Trump's own defense, who he hired and paid to represent him, agreed to the people that were selected, for this jury. And I can't, show that enough, because, look, in the O.J. Simpson trial, he's dead now. And everybody said when he was alive, we all thought he was guilty. And what was it? The prosecution just did not present the winning case. That's what it comes down to. Which side presented a more believable case? If you can present that shadow of a doubt, right, beyond a reasonable doubt, a defense is going to win. And that's what happened in the O.J. Simpson case. It wasn't because the jury had, so many African Americans or so many football fans, or because he, was an attractive former football player and celebrity. That's not why. It just came down to the prosecution didn't give enough evidence to get over the finish line.
That's right. And look, we all know that our justice system in this country doesn't have a sterling past. There's obviously black and brown people have not had fair shakes in our justice system for a very long time. But as a general matter, we entrust juries to make decisions in specific cases. Most of the time, we'd like to think that they get it right and that judges are acting impartially to help the jury reach a fair verdict. Sometimes they get it wrong, of course. There's always a chance for appeal. Donald Trump is going to have his chance to appeal his case and try to get it reversed. He has every right to do that. He can try to continue to maintain his innocence, but we can't. It's very dangerous when we get into a territory like Trump and many Republicans have gotten into now, where they say the entire system is rigged against them, that they can't get a fair trial anywhere. You're right that Trump and his team really got to analyze those jurors. I'll remind people that many of those jurors said that they get their news in part from conservative sites, including Truth Social. Some of them said they consult. So these were not lefties. These were at the very least people who met, most of them, these jurors, get their news from several different sources. And some actually said they don't follow politics closely at all.
And by the way, Donald Trump and his team got to remember what they're claiming. Donald Trump says he's loved. Look at how many people showed up for him in the Bronx. So basically, that was a jury of his peers, according to him, and who supports him, right? Thank you, Michael. Michael Sozan. Follow him on X at MICHAELSOZAN. He is with the Center for American Progress Action Fund, their website, AmericanProgressAction.org. On X, follow them at CAP Action, CAP Action on Facebook, and that's capital A CAPA, on Facebook at American Progress Action, and on Instagram at Fight for Progress. Michael, thank you for being with us. We'll have you on again. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Leslie.